Gonna get a little creative today. With me is my awesome colleague, Kalissa, and we're so excited. Ashley was our colleague, and then she moved, but she still comes back to us every once in a while, and we're so glad she's with us today because she's just a wonderful person. She's a storyteller, a writer, and a consultant, and she is here today to lead us in some stories. Thanks, Ashley.
Yeah, thank you, Eden. Oh, and thank you, Calissa, in the background there helping out. I'm so grateful to be here. Like Eden said, I had worked full time at PMD Alliance for a little while and then left to do some other things, but I always come back. This community has meant so much to me, and some of you I've gotten to witness and share some of your stories through blog writing. So it's special to be back here. Yeah, I'm a writer and a storyteller, and what matters most to me, or what means the most to me, is the healing, cathartic, empowering nature of sharing our stories, particularly when it's done in community, writing or sharing in community. So I'm hoping today getting to connect like this will be nourishing. So how I want to get started, and actually I should say it's a small group. So if you want to, if you're comfortable putting your video on, and at certain points when I ask questions, unmuting yourself, you're welcome to just, we can sort of dive in and talk together since it's a small, intimate group. And so I can see some of your faces on there. I'm usually the one on the Zoom groups who's like hiding without my video on, so I understand if you don't want to, but it's lovely to see some faces here. So what I was saying is how I'd like to get started is with a very tiny exercise in the chat, which is something that if you've taken our I Am Poetry workshop is something that you might be familiar with. So I'm going to start a sentence for you, and I want you to go ahead and finish the sentence. The sentence is I am dot dot dot. And the reason I chose this is because today we're going to be exploring who we are, exploring our story. So you can finish this sentence in the chat any way you want. Eden is hungry. So you can say something like you're hungry, you're creative, you're someone who likes to play the banjo. So basically one sentence, tell us who you are, and go ahead and put that in the chat. Karen's brave. I love that. Yes. Anyone else want to share with their one sentence? I'm a woman who uses her library card more than her credit card. Good for you. Denise is a connector and an innovator. That's so true, Denise. You are. Yeah, I love that. Well, feel free to continue putting some thoughts in the chat. Barb is cold because it's snowing there. I'm sorry, Barb. I'm in the sunshine right now, so I wish I could send some of that your way. Oh, Vicky's curious. Vicky, that's one of my favorite words, to be curious. Sherry's a wife, a mother, and a grandmother, defining herself by her relationships. Dave is a grandfather and he loves it. Good for you, Dave. That's wonderful. Patricia is a positive thinker. Oh, we've got some good attitudes here today. This is going to be great. Okay, so just a little overview of what we'll be doing today. It's April, which means it's Parkinson's Awareness Month. And we want to come together at PMD Alliance to create a global impact to raise awareness. And we want to do that by sharing stories. And so this workshop will help you develop your story. The idea is that throughout this month, we're going to invite you and the entire community, whether you're living with Parkinson's or you're a care partner or you're a medical provider, we're going to invite you to share your story on social media and tag PMD Alliance so we can gather all these stories and raise awareness together. If you're not on social media, we have other ways for you to share, so stay tuned. This is still something that you can use regardless of whether you end up sharing on social media or not. So that's our main focus. We're going to talk about the power of storytelling, why raising awareness matters. I've created these templates for you to write your story, so you'll have a chance to either use those templates verbatim or kind of do something, creative and go rogue with it. So we'll go through those templates for you to use. We'll explore a couple examples of people who've used the template to write their story. And if we have some time, we'll do a couple writing prompts and take some questions. Um, the thing I want to leave you with, I should say, before we really dive in, is that there's no writing experience required. If you're, a published author, great. Or if you've never written anything creatively before, you're welcome here. Um, I hope that today you, and whenever you go to write, that you trust what comes out of you and what lands on the page, that you trust your inner voice. And so we're not going to apologize for our writing today. I feel like sometimes when people share their writing, they're like, oh, I'm sorry, it's not that good, or I didn't know what I was doing, but I know your writing's going to be perfect as it is. So no apologies today. We're just going to share and support each other. So the first thing that I want to share in the chat, if I, hold on, give me a second to organize myself here. I was having fun talking to Eden and Calissa beforehand and didn't get as organized as I should have. So I'm going to put a quote in the chat that I want to give us a chance to discuss, and I'll read the quote aloud to you. So the quote is by Brene Brown, and she said, "When we deny our stories, they define us. When we own our stories, we get to write a brave new ending." I'll read that one more time. So when we deny our stories, they define us. When we own our stories, we get to write a brave new ending. So if anyone feels comfortable, you can unmute yourself. I'd love to hear what that quote means to you, or you can share something in the chat. Or what do you think of when you hear that quote from Brene Brown? Oh, thank you. Switching the view. That's very helpful. Anyone have any thoughts about that? No wrong answers. Yeah, Gail, we are the sole owner of our story. I think that's so powerful that we have the opportunity to claim our story and our narrative and not let other people define it. And the stories we tell about ourselves are really powerful. They shape our perspective and therefore the way we move in the world. Because they're shaping how we view ourselves, the stories that we tell about who we are and what we think is possible. So yeah, our stories are powerful. We get to claim them when we tell it ourselves. Anyone have any other thoughts?
I feel like when you say to deny a story, it's something that perhaps you're not proud of. Because if it was something you were proud of, you would happily share it. And so it's almost like in a way you're staying kind of locked in that negativity as opposed to kind of saying I'm more than just this
Mm.
thing that maybe an act that I committed or a behavior or something.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I think that's part of perhaps telling our stories, is that we have all of these parts, and getting to see ourselves and welcome in all parts of ourselves, even the parts that we don't necessarily love. Corey says, when we share our stories, we get to relive them, but also to see ourselves and our perspectives in different lights. Yeah, absolutely. You get to, as a storyteller, you get to see it from a different lens, and that helps us deepen our awareness and again, maybe develop the ways we move forward in the world a little bit differently. I love that. And the other thing I think about stories, and maybe you can relate to this as a diagnosis story with Parkinson's, but I'm going to tell it from a different perspective. I used to work for an organization that supported families with babies with Down syndrome. And oftentimes parents would tell me that when they'd find out they were going to have a child with Down syndrome, the doctor would say, "I'm sorry," or the first thing they'd say are all the negative things that their child will never be able to do. And so sometimes parents often would hear, "Oh, your child with Down syndrome will have low muscle tone." And so parents might have that story in their mind and never enroll their child in sports because they thought it wasn't possible. And now we see so many young people with Down syndrome doing gymnastics or swimming, or there's this wonderful young man, Caleb, who I follow, who just ran a triathlon, or swam, biked a triathlon, which is incredible. So when we shift that story and we change the narrative and we get to define what's possible, it really does change our life trajectory, and it inspires and affects other people. Yeah, and David, that's something I was going to talk about too. Sharing stories creates connection, right? It's how we accompany each other on our journeys. It's how we remember that we're not alone. Christine, sharing stories gives us a sense of context for the audience, for themselves. Yeah, it helps deepen clarity. Absolutely. So let's talk about why storytelling or why raising awareness through stories matters. So I'd love to hear from some of you, like why did you come today? Why is raising awareness important to you when it comes to Parkinson's? And again, you can unmute yourself, you can put something in the chat. Yeah, why is raising awareness important for you? I mean, for many of you, I imagine it's personal. So that makes a difference. For me, I want to touch on, yeah, Denise says owning and sharing our stories to overcome stigma and misperceptions of PD. So yeah, that goes back to what Brene Brown was saying. We get to, and Eden, we get to define the story for ourselves. Absolutely, that's great. And people don't know what it's like too. So when you say misconceptions, you get to set the story straight. Like, this is what it's like for me. This is my lived experience. Sheila, storytelling is a huge part of my culture growing up in Louisiana. It's a connection to my culture and my family's past. And speaking of not just, I mean, the culture of Louisiana, perhaps, and your family, but this as humans is something we've been doing since like the beginning of time, sitting around the fire and telling stories. This is how we learn. We tell stories to learn things, because stories can stick with us in a way that sometimes facts don't, right? You can hear a fact or read something in a textbook, but then someone tells you a story about it. And it's the emotion of it that really draws you in and sticks with you. Karen says it helps build inspiration and sympathy and empathy. Yeah, I think, again, I think it's that emotion that people can relate to. So even if you feel like you're different from someone else, you read their story, and it's usually something you're like, oh, I can find a little bit of myself in there. It's that humanity that connects us. There's some writer, he wrote something about storytelling. To be honest, I don't even know, but I found his quote online. T.L. Gargiulo, and he said, the quickest path between yourself and another person is a story. It brings us closer. Corey's here to promote getting and giving more support to care partners, which I thought was lacking in both my OT profession and from the healthcare system was when I was taking care of my husband. Yeah, I think I recently spoke to a care partner who said, like, it's a secret. She feels like what it's like to be a care partner is a secret burden. And so she wants to sort of make care partners realize that it's okay to share more than just amongst themselves, that the world needs to know. And I think, let's see, is Jem wanting to share here?
Yeah.
Oh,
Can
sure.
you hear
Go ahead.
me?
Sorry, Jem.
I can't type right now. I'm in a group, and a writing group, and recently I started having a lot of dyskinesia, and I knew that they would be noticing it. So I wrote up a piece about Parkinson's, and it ended up being much longer than I'd expected. And everybody was so grateful.
Mm.
They were all so grateful. They kept saying, you've got to publish this somewhere. And that's a lot of work to figure out what to do with that. But that's one of the reasons I came today. But everybody just thanked me so much, because they said they understood the whole picture, the context that somebody wrote about. So that's partly why I came today.
Oh, I love that. And I think it sounds like you were vulnerable and honest in your story. And I think that's magnetic, right? We're drawn to people who show up as they are. And so by you doing that, it also encourages other people to be that way in their own lives and to understand you a little bit more deeply. It's like an intimate invitation into who you are, which is really special. Yeah, Christine said it breaks down ignorance and fear. Absolutely, right? Because about Parkinson's, people might have a certain idea of what it is or who you are because of it. And by telling your own story, you get to, again, set the narrative straight. And just jumping back to what Jem was saying before, she's like, oh, I can't type now. Yeah, anyone, I love that you're all sharing in the chat. That's perfect. But at any point, if I ask a question, you want to just unmute yourself and jump in, that's totally fine too. So no worries about that. The other reason I think sharing stories in particular to raise awareness matters is for medical professionals, it's important that they know too. Sometimes, and there's amazing medical professionals, but sometimes some of them can get lost in the research or the numbers and not really know what the lived experience is. And so if they're going to be able to best support you on your journey, it's important that they understand more of the full picture. And I think the more we share collectively and the more we raise awareness, it leads to potential for innovation and sharing ideas amongst each other and growth. I don't know if any of you know Robert Cochran. He does improv for people with PD, and yeah, David saying yes, and other storytelling. He's fantastic, and he's been working on a book, which is exciting, and I've gotten to read some of what he's drafted so far. And I wanted to share something that he wrote in the book because it's connected. He said, all of us directly affected by Parkinson's disease. Those who've been diagnosed, care partners, family members, employers, employees, coworkers, community members, and the wellness practitioners who serve the community. All of us need to explore and share our stories so we can better understand and ultimately work together to end Parkinson's disease. The more stories we share, the more we will see the universal human patterns emerge. These patterns can lead to new directions of research and understanding, as well as civic engagement. So he's tapping into that idea of like, the more that's collectively known about what it's really like, things pop up and we start innovating and coming up not only with better treatments or avenues for research, but even just helping each other, like little, I hate to use the word like hacks, but how to navigate this journey a little bit better. And that was the last point I was going to make, David. You're ahead of me. I love it. You're already anticipating where I'm going. You said it's validating to hear stories with similarities to our own. Oftentimes when we're going through something, and it could be Parkinson's, it could be grief, it could be, I mean, all sorts of things, we might feel like we're the only ones who are going through it. And it's comforting to know that there are other people who get it. They might not have the same exact circumstances of yours, of course, everyone's journey is different, but sharing a story doesn't take away any of the hard parts, but there is something comforting about knowing there's other people walking this journey with you and you're not the only one in it. I think James Baldwin, the writer, had said something like, I thought I was alone in the world until I read. And stories sort of opened his world and you realize, oh, there's someone else out there like me. And so sometimes when you tell your story, you might think, oh, why should I share this? Does it matter? But there's probably someone else out there who's like longing to hear what it is that you have to say, who's going to look at your story and say, oh, that's me. And like, I'm not the only one. And that's validating. And as human beings, we want that. We want that sense of belonging and knowing that we're not alone in all of that. So yeah, great points. I appreciate all of that. What I'd like to do now, and let's see, I think Calissa already put it in the chat, but we have some templates. In fact, I'll just add it here. Oh, wait, or maybe she's on it. Okay. So I created some templates for sharing our stories. I'm going to open them. I'm going to share my screen. You're welcome to, click it open on yours too, but I'll share my screen. Give me 1 second and we'll just go through them. We'll talk about them. Right, sharing screen. Okay. Can you all see this? Thumbs up if you. Yes, perfect. Okay, great. I'm just going to move everyone's faces to the side so I can see. So these templates will be available to you. They're online. You can access them whenever you'd like. And the idea behind this was that if you're going to share your story, whether it's on social media, an email, or anywhere in another capacity, to have a guide. So if you feel a little intimidated by writing your story, you can follow these templates exactly as they are. There's like a little fill in the blank on each one. I'll scroll through to show you more. And that can be perfect, and that's how you tell your story. You can also let these templates be a guide or inspiration. So you want to like use parts of it, but not use other parts. That's great. Or as I said earlier, if you want to go rogue and just feel like, I want to tell my story how I want to tell my story, please do. That's also encouraged. So the whole range is possible. But I'll go through these just to give you an idea. So we have multiple templates here. I'll just scroll quickly so you can see. We have 2 templates for people living with a movement disorder, whether it's Parkinson's or another movement disorder. So 2 different options you can use or be inspired by. There's an option for care partners. It's geared specifically to what it's like to be a care partner. If you or someone you know has a loved one who's passed away with a movement disorder but wants to continue to raise awareness or honor them, there's a template that they can be inspired by as well. And then there's a template for medical professionals, occupational therapists, you know, it could be support group leaders, not medical, like other people who are connected to the community. I'm going to focus today on the person with a movement disorder template and the care partner template, although all of these are available. We'll go through these quickly, and then I'll show you examples, which will hopefully help give more flesh to the templates here. So just to give you an example, this is the first option for a person with a movement disorder. And you can see these little spaces, these parts that are underlined here and in like the little brackets, that's sort of like Mad Libs. That's where you fill in the blank. So just to read this template to you, oh, I'm reading option 2. Let's go back to option 1. It could go something like this. I am one of more than 10 million people worldwide living with, and insert whether it's Parkinson's or another type of movement disorder. Currently, there is no cure. The hardest part of living with, insert what type of movement disorder. So the hardest part of living with Parkinson's is, finish the sentence. You can add whatever you'd like there. But I'm resilient and I get through my hardest days by something that carries you through, reminding people of your strength or resilience. It could be a song that carries you through on a hard day, or a person, or a mantra, or a practice. As the number of people living with movement disorders rises rapidly, people like me need support now more than ever. Caveat before this last paragraph. We are PMD Alliance, and so we want to give, when you share your story on social media to someone who maybe doesn't know a lot about Parkinson's or being a care partner, we want to direct them to action. And so in this case, we were like, we want to direct them to PMD Alliance to say that they can support PMD Alliance so people like you can continue getting the resources they need. This is optional. Of course, we would love it if you shared and said something about PMD Alliance and there's a link to give. But if you don't feel like that's part of your story, that's okay. So just know that. So the third paragraph on this one says PMD Alliance, and I encourage you to insert the social media tag for PMD Alliance, which are listed at the bottom of the template so that we can find your story and share. So PMD Alliance has ... insert what PMD has meant to you. It's been a lifeline for me. It's connected me to support groups, informed me with webinars, etc. They walk alongside everyone impacted by the disease, providing reliable resources, empowering education, understanding, and a compassionate community. This PD Awareness Month, you can make a difference for people like me across the world by giving to PMD Alliance today. So what you would do when you write your story, so you can use this template exactly or as a guide, you'd include photos in your post to make it personal. People love to see your faces. And then we encourage you to use these 2 hashtags, again, if you're doing this on social media. So that way, I'll be on PMD Alliance's social media searching for this hashtag, and I can find your stories and share them, or people who want to learn more, they'll maybe read your story and want to see other people around the world who are sharing their stories. They'll be able to click on that hashtag and find it. Before I go through the next template, and I will take questions, I do want to say that if you don't have social media, there are a couple things you can do. If you like email, you know, create a list of friends and family you want to email your story to and encourage them, you know, share your story that way. You can also email me, and I'll put my email address at the end in the chat. And I can share your story to PMD Alliance's social media pages, so that's an option too. If writing or typing is hard, you can use a talk to text function on your phone, or like Google Docs has it. I think Microsoft Word has it. So that's another way to do this if it's like typing's a little challenging. And the other option is if you don't want to write something and you just want to take your phone and record like a 60-second video of you sharing your story, you can do it that way too. So there are all sorts of options for sharing, and I'll repeat all of this at the end too. So that's just one example. I'll go quickly through the other example for a person with a movement disorder. This one begins, the first thought that raced through my mind when I was diagnosed with Parkinson's was, insert your thought. Living with Parkinson's is, describe what it's like. It's isolating. It feels like a constant battle. It's been challenging, etc. I've gone through, and then insert something that you've gone through, invisible symptoms, depression, loneliness, multiple hospital stays, so people can understand what it's been like. Currently, there is no cure. And then again, we have something about PMD Alliance, which you can do, use, not use. These are, you can see, are relatively brief, these story templates, because social media people tend to read shorter stories, unfortunately. But again, this is your own. I'm going to show you some examples, one of which is longer. So if you feel you want to dive more into your story or more of the positive side of your story, please do. And then I'll just quickly read the care partner example. I have two options at the beginning for you, depending on if you're living in the US or you're around the world. So I'll read the US version. I'm one of nearly 40 million care partners across the United States. In 2022, my husband, Joe, was diagnosed with Parkinson's. For me, raising awareness is personal. Living with Parkinson's is fill in the blank. My husband, Joe, has gone through, loneliness, again, whatever they've gone through. Currently, there is no cure. The hardest part of being a care partner to Joe is, finish the sentence. As the number of people living with movement disorders skyrockets, people like me and Joe need support now more than ever. And then again, a call to action to PMD Alliance that you can use or make your own. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment because that was a lot of information to take in at once. Does anyone have any questions about that or anything confusing about what I've shared? Anything you want to add? And if you have questions throughout this, please just put them in the chat or unmute yourself. So again, these templates are just something to inspire you. You can use them exactly, or you can do your own thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share again, but this time I'm going to share two people, real people, one with Parkinson's and one who's a care partner, who filled out the template just so you can get an idea of how this was put into action. All right, so we'll share one more time. Oh, and actually, other thing I'm going, nope, this one. The other thing I'm going to do here is if you want to have access to this is a Google Doc. So you're welcome to look at this on your own as I scroll, if that's easier, or come back to it later. These are two examples. So we're very lucky. Denise is here with us, and her partner, Bernard, shared his story. I'm so grateful to him for doing that. So he used the care partner template, and you'll see that in his, he basically followed the template, which is great. So Bernard says, I am one of nearly 40 million care partners across the United States. In 2018, my wife Denise was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease after nearly 15 years of knowing something was wrong. For me, raising awareness of the diversity of Parkinson's patients is personal. Living with someone who has Parkinson's disease is emotionally challenging. My wife has gone through many non-motor challenges, or what I now call invisible Parkinson's disease symptoms. Currently, there is no cure for the disease. The hardest part of being a care partner to Denise is dealing with having to remain emotionally upbeat, even as the journey towards the closing chapters of this disease is relentless. As the news of the number of people living with movement disorders skyrockets, people like Denise and I need grassroots support and compassion now more than ever. PMD Alliance has been a jewel for people like Denise and I. They walk alongside everyone impacted by the disease, providing reliable resources, empowering education, and listening for understanding. For example, they've provided opportunities for us to work directly with and encourage others in the Parkinson's disease community. This has empowered us by giving us a way to positively impact our community members on this Parkinson's journey. It gives our lives a sense of purpose and meaning. And then at the end, he has that call to action with the hashtags. And he sent a photo of them too that he would use if it were on social media. So I'm going to pause for a moment. Does anyone have anything they want to react to about Bernard's story? And it could be anything to something you related to, or something you have a question about, or something you liked. You can put any of your reactions in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself.
I think we're just taking it in.
Yeah, it is a lot to take in. Yeah. And I know I've read this through multiple times, and you've all only gotten to look at it once. One of the things that I appreciate is his honesty. I thought it was so, when he talks about like the journey is relentless. and he adores Denise, and it's just, and yet it's okay to be honest. Sometimes I feel, or care partners have told me they feel like they don't feel like they can share the burden of it, because they want their loved one to know they're not a burden, that they love their loved one. But it's important that we bring that to light. I see we have some comments in the chat too. Yeah, Gail, it's important to share our stories with policymakers too. Absolutely. If we want funding for research, it's not just people in the community, but it's for anyone to see. Yeah, Felissa said invisible Parkinson's symptoms is powerful, right? It's sometimes someone can look at you and think you look fine, or they don't know what's happening beneath the surface. So these stories bring to light all the stuff you can't see. Fact checking. I did my best with the 40 million. If you feel like there's a different number, again, this is meant for you to go with. Oh yeah, sorry, 40 million care partners, not people with PD. Thank you, Eden. And that's, I don't know, I forget, the National Foundation for Caregivers or something, that was their number. And for caregivers generally, not just PD. But yeah, this is why it's yours, make it your own. Anyone else have any thoughts about Bernard's? Anything they want to add or were touched by? I also like that, it's okay, Sheila. I like that Bernard and Denise are amazing advocates in the community. And so for them calling out, talking about the diversity within Parkinson's was important to them. So he added his own touch to the template. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and go to Karen's story. So Karen is someone who's living with Parkinson's. And as you'll see here, her story is longer. so bear with me. And she went rogue, as I say. She used the first line of the template, but then kind of went from there. I know it's a lot. I'll try to go slow. And again, you have this document if you want to look back at it later. So Karen wrote, "The first thought that raced through my mind when I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease was that I wanted to prove my neurologist wrong. It was late November 2019. My neurologist had ordered an EMG, and during the test, my left leg kept shaking. Another neurologist in the practice walked in during the test and said, 'Looks like she has dystonia.' 'Isn't that a country near Russia?' I asked. I'd ignored my symptoms even as they accumulated over time. I was a single mom with 3 adolescent children, and I never paid much attention to things that bothered me. I was having increasing difficulty walking, I dragged my left leg, and I was unable to swing my left arm. When the neurologist called around Christmas with the results of my tests, I said to him, 'Tell me the good news.' I'm an eternal optimist." I was in denial. After an awkward pause, he said, "Karen, there are areas of the brain that produce dopamine that did not light up on your scan." He told me I had young onset Parkinson's disease with dystonia. In January 2020, I started carbidopa-levodopa, the gold standard medication for Parkinson's disease. But when my medication wears off, my left hand still wants to contract into what I call the claw. As the medication continued to wear off, my left toes curled under so badly that the tendons tore off the top of my foot, and it swelled up like a balloon. Over time, I needed more and more medication. My foot would twist inward and my lower leg would twist. Dystonia spread to the entire left side of my body. My autonomic nervous system also became affected. Everything I took for granted, like eating, started to become difficult. I'd be in the middle of making sandwiches for my kids' lunch boxes, and I started to have blackouts. I would crawl to the sofa and ask my kids to bring me a glass of water. I would say, "I will be fine in a minute," but I wasn't. I was late getting my kids to school, and I started having to call other moms to pick up my kids and take them to school. Living with YOPD is physically and emotionally challenging, but I choose to begin each day with gratitude and joy. I still have my life, although it was changed. I always think of my father who taught me how to ski. When I fell down, he would say, "Brush out the snow, the conditions are great, let's keep going." My father passed away suddenly in December of 2022, but he is in my heart, and I still hear his voice telling me to keep going. Parkinson's for me has been an ever-changing journey that at times is isolating, but I made a decision that is not something to fight. I need to accept and adapt to what the challenges are. The silver lining is the friends I have met locally in my PD support group and around the world in the Parkinson's community. I'm overwhelmed with gratitude to have connected to so many special people with Parkinson's who have paved the way ahead of me. PMD Alliance has been a lifeline for people like me. I discovered through their I Am Poetry project that I could write poetry. The informational sessions are so valuable and truly supportive. I walk alongside everyone impacted by the disease, providing resources, education, understanding. This Parkinson's Awareness Month, you can make a difference for people like me by giving to PMD Alliance today. Just pausing to breathe that in and give everyone a moment to sort of take that in. This one was longer, is she, I think, went into a little bit more of the emotional side and also the deep challenges and also her gratitude. Does anyone want to respond to Karen's story? Yeah, Eden, I saw you laughing. You said, I was engrossed in her story, but I appreciate her lacings of humor like a country near Russia. I love that she was able to mix something that was obviously very challenging with like a levity, some humor to it. Yeah, Christine, Karen's story makes it real, right? You can picture it, the little details she included. I love the detail about how when she's making lunch, and it's heartbreaking, but I can picture her like standing at the kitchen counter, making her children's lunch boxes and feeling like she's gonna pass out and just telling her kids I'll be fine, but then needing to call other parents. Like you can picture that, it brings it home, whether you're a mom or not. It touches your soul, Karen said. And someone else shared, it's definitely helpful and validating to hear. So yeah, I just want to point out those little moments. Sometimes what really makes a story personal and helps us connect to it is when we have those little moments, those little, like almost like a snapshot that someone reading it can visualize in their head, whether it's I picked up the phone and said, tell me the good news, or the conversation where I thought Estonia was a country in Russia, or that little detail about the lunch boxes. This, of course, and for people who know her, who she shares it with, the part about her dad, because whether that's not just a thing that people with Parkinson's or someone who loves someone with Parkinson's deals with, we all at some point in our lives are going to face grief and a connection to a father. And then if you do include the PMD Alliance paragraph, which again, you don't have to, but we encourage it if you like, Karen talked personally about certain programs or things that have touched her. So again, that made it personal for people reading to connect with. Yeah, Barb, I appreciate her honesty and little details, especially grateful that she mixed the good with the bad. I love that too, that this wasn't just like, and it's okay if this is what you want your story to be, but like, this is incurable and my life is over. There's also this like, no, I'm learning to navigate this and live with this. And there's room for both of those things to exist at the same time. So yeah, thank you all for listening and sharing about Karen's story. I'm gonna stop my share there. So those were just two examples, two ways you can do this. There are so many ways that you can choose to do this. So what I'd like to do in the chat is we're gonna just do like little writing prompts that are basically one sentence that eventually if you want to use as you develop your story, you can, but you don't have to. So the first one, and I'll just type this here, hold on. Living with them. Apparently I can't type and talk, so give me a moment. Okay, so the first one is for people with a movement disorder. The second one is for care partners. If you are a medical provider or someone else, you can say caring for people with Parkinson's, but finish the sentence. Living with a movement disorder is ... or loving someone with a movement disorder is ... You can take a moment to jot that down or just write your answer directly into the chat. If you want to unmute yourself and finish the sentence that way, you can. Vicky says more challenging than it appears. Yeah, that goes back to the invisible symptoms, right? So when you say that, people might think, oh, I know what you go through, but it's more difficult than that. Mm-hmm. Dave, living with a movement disorder is frightening. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's scary. And as human beings, that we all want to avoid the scary and the uncertain. And so people can relate to that emotion. Like, this is uncertain. Gail, it's ever changing. Yeah, like a roller coaster. New things are maybe coming upon you. Yeah, these are beautiful lines. I don't know if beautiful is the right word, that in your story can really have impact. Barb, something I have to live with daily. That's an important reminder. Like, this is not something I get to take a vacation from or just kind of like put on the back burner for a while. It's something I live with daily. Naomi, it's not easy for others to understand. Yeah, and that's exactly why we're doing this. Unless they're in your body and living it themselves, it's very hard to really know what your experience is. I love it, Karen. It's a gift. It reminds us to live life to the fullest. And I think that's an important, sometimes controversial, but important point to make. I don't know if you all heard Dr. Bass Bloom had done some sort of study about answering the question, is there a silver lining to Parkinson's? And there were a handful of people who were like, no, absolutely not. There's not, and that's perfectly fine. And some people said, I've made changes. I've shifted things in my relationship. It's not something I would ever ask for, but sometimes there's a silver lining. So Karen, if you want to make your story about it also being a burden and a gift, that's wonderful. Someone else had said it's given him a whole new community and he's grateful. Yeah, the connections we get to make, like right here, we get to be with each other sharing.
Ashley, that's a great podcast. Somebody might want to put it in the chat to listen to it because he's an amazing speaker.
Oh, Dr. Bass.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if Calissa can find that. I have listened to it. It's wonderful.
It's no silver bullet.
Yeah. Thanks, Karen. Barb, living with Parkinson's. Oh, I skipped Denise. I'll come back to Denise. Barb, it's a chance to display joy, happiness, not based on your circumstances. Denise, live your life and take a day at a time. That's great advice. You have to keep living, right? As again, Robert Cochran, I'm going to borrow from him just because I just read his book, but he says you have to get busy living. And when we tell that story, especially for people who are newly diagnosed or doctors start telling that story, it changes the trajectory of the disease because it's no longer like, I'm going to tell you this diagnosis and it's apocalyptic. It's that you can still get busy living. There's life to live. Thank you for that. All right, I've got my next prompt for you is this. Hold on. So for this next prompt, I wanted to get into more of that resilience that comes, or what do you do to help lift yourself up? So if you can finish the sentence, I get through my hardest days by. What helps carry you through those hard days? I feel like Eden, you should put like making brownies, or I saw her typing and I thought there might be something about brownies coming. Eating cookies. Yeah, eating cookies. That's always a good one. Sometimes you need some comfort food to get through your hardest days. We had a prompt yesterday on our social media channels about like what song picks you up, and there were some good answers on there about oh gosh, now of course I can't think of it, like the Sunshine Song and being grateful. Yeah, both Karen and Barb talk about a gratitude journal. Sorry, I'm reading another comment and distracted. Karen, can you remember the name of Bass Bloom's podcast? We just want to get a link to it. And
I think it's My Silver Bullet. It's a European podcast, and I'm pretty sure he spoke about it on that one.
Okay, thanks. And if not, maybe we can send a link to everyone afterwards.
He also talks about it in the book.
Yeah, and if you Google like Bass Bloom and silver lining Parkinson's, like he'll have a video that comes up and some other stuff. But sorry, getting back to this gratitude journal, I think sometimes it can seem like, oh, I don't need to like record 3 things I'm grateful for today, but it can shift your attitude when you think like there are things that are lost, but what still remains? What am I grateful for? Jem says reading. Yeah, I love reading too. Playing pickleball with other parkies. Oh, that's so creative and fun. I love that. I've never played pickleball. I'm gonna have to try it. Even you cannot sing "You're My Sunshine" without singing and probably smiling. Oh, and Gail's just mentioning if any of the resources or books or podcasts that have been mentioned can be added to the chat. I'll try to keep a running list too that maybe we can get to you afterwards. Yeah, and just going back, Jem, singing and dancing. is how you get through. Going back to the gratitude thing, I'd read something recently by a psychologist who actually deals with grief, but sometimes dealing with Parkinson's can be like a grief journey as well. And he has the transformational model of grief. His name is, and in fact, I'll put it here, John Schneider, transformational model of grief. And he has 3 questions that you can journal. And the first question is, what is lost? So, you know, what have you grieved over? The second one is, what is left, though? And that reminds me of the gratitude. Like, despite all of this, what's still left? And the third one is, what is possible? Encouraging you to almost like retell that story and reimagine what could be possible. So what is lost? What is left? What is possible? Well, I love these. It makes me want to like sing and dance now. But these are great things to include in your story too. Like, what lifts you up? What brings you joy? Because we're all, no matter what we're dealing with in our lives, life is hard, and we need each other to get through, and we need reminders of what carries each other through. So that's something that we can include, and you can include in your stories. And the last one is something that PMD Alliance is famous for. We sometimes ask you at different events to write down what you wish others knew about Parkinson's. And maybe that's something you would want to include in your story. So if you want to finish the sentence out loud or in the chat, I wish you knew, ... What do you wish someone else knew about living or living something? Vicky says, I wish you knew that I no longer feel like myself. Mm-hmm. And I think that's relatable. It's like, I've talked to people who've said that they almost have to define themselves pre-diagnosis and post-diagnosis as they search to try to find or rediscover their identity or reimagine their identity. Oh, and we have more podcasts in the chat. Thank you, Felissa. Christine wishes you knew that it's harder than it looks. Mm. Karen, I wish you knew that some days are better than others. It's not something we are doing differently. That's so important too, that it's not like I did this to make this happen. It's sort of outside of your control. And some days you might be out doing great things, feel like having fun and having adventures, and other days where it's harder. Sheila, I wish you knew how much we miss the friends and family who've left us. Yeah. Jem, I wish you knew how much effort I'm putting in to keep my balance when you see me just standing there. Again, that invisible part of it, I wish you knew. We're gonna wrap up soon, sort of go over some things, get a chance to ask some questions. But before we do that, I just wanna ask if anyone else has anything else they want to share about your story, or anything that you've been sparked to think about today, or that you want to respond to something someone else said. Basically, this is free space for you to share whatever you want, if anyone has anything additional that they want to share with the group.
You can just come off mute, or you could put it in the chat if you would like.
And I can sit here quietly for a few moments. It's okay. I'll give you some time. And if you don't have anything to share, that's okay too. Jem, Jem, I see you nodding. Did you want to share something?
Well, this has been interesting and validating. I've really enjoyed reading what other people have written. Just the little bits.
Yeah, and that's I think the fun part that's going to happen, or I don't know if fun is the right word, but continuing to be validating part, is that throughout April, we're going to encourage you all and the entire community to share on social media, and then we'll be sharing some of those stories, and everyone will be using that hashtag. So if you really want to go deeper, this was just kind of a teaser to give you an idea of what we're doing, how you can tell this story or develop the story on your own. but you'll get to go deeper into their stories all month and really almost see what Karen said or Bernard or other care partners. Yeah, Dave is asking, where can we go to read what people wrote? So because this is like a social media campaign, the best way to do it is to follow PMD Alliance on social media. But the other, which is in the template, so you'll find them there. There are hashtags that we're going to encourage people to use. So those are like little statements at the end of your story. And the two hashtags are PD looks like me and PD Stories United. Again, this is all written out in the template. So if you're on Facebook or Instagram and you just search that hashtag or you click on it at the bottom of someone else's story, it will bring you to all the people who have used that same hashtag. So then you can just kind of scroll through and see. Again, we'll be sharing throughout the month on social media. So, but of course, hopefully lots of people share and we can't, share everyone's. So that's one way to do it. Thank you. Yeah, we have in the chat, PD looks like me and PD Stories United. Does anyone have any questions about anything that we've shared today? Yeah, Naomi, I love what you've shared here. Even though I don't wish PD for anyone, I feel blessed to have it because of all of the wonderful people that I've met. Community, I feel like, how do we emerge from darkness on the backs of community? Being right here with each other, the friendships that are built in support groups and outside of support groups, at events. Again, you don't wish for PD upon anyone perhaps, but it's one of those silver linings. And why I always love coming back here. I know people say it and it sounds cliche, but I'm like, the Parkinson's community is the best. It's really all of you who choose to show up that I appreciate. Barb says, when I was first diagnosed, I didn't want to be defined by Parkinson's disease. However, the more of me I put into this community, I am defined by Parkinson's, and that's okay. Yeah, Parkinson's is one part of your story, and you can have Parkinson's disease and it can be part of your story without it dominating everything about your lives. For those of you who did the I Am poem, that was the idea behind it, of like, you get to define who I am, and Parkinson's is one part, but I am so much more than just a disease. And it's okay to embrace all of those parts. Like Eden said before, there are parts that we might at first not have wanted to embrace, but what happens when we kind of say yes to all of them? So we have some of those links from the chat today. Eden, or Calissa, do you know how to, if you want to come off mute and tell people how to save the chat?
If you go down to the bottom of your chat, there's like 3 little dots next to the how to share your stories to raise PD awareness. It says more, and that is how you can save your chat. If you are having trouble saving your chat, if you email me direct, not email me direct, if you change from everyone to Eden, I can then email you everything in the chat. Now, Calissa just put it in there. If you want to either email me or send me your email, I will save the chat, and then this way you can have it.
Thank you, Eden. And I realized that was confusing because I put my email address in the chat at the same time. Unfortunately, I'm not good with technical issues, but with saving chats or anything, but I put my email there for a couple of reasons. One, if you want to reach out as you're developing your story or you want to share it with me, I'm here. I love that. I love connecting with you all. If you're someone who's not on social media and would like me to share your story to social media, email it to me and I can share it through PMD Alliance's page. So that's there for anyone who wants to reach out. That's my email address. A couple of friendly reminders. So it's during this month. I mean, we want you to share your story anytime, but ideally we're going for during this month. April, Parkinson's Awareness Month, is when you'll share your story on social media. You can, again, use these templates exactly. You can create your own thing. You can share this as a video if you don't want to write. You want to record a video of yourself talking about your experience. That's wonderful too. Any other question? Karen, was that a hand raise or was that just a moving? Okay, just wanted to make sure. Well, again, if you have any questions, you need to reach out to me. That's my email address. You can find me. Thank you all for joining me today. I feel like I grow so much from getting to witness even little parts of your journey. And I feel just nourished by your presence. So thank you for being here.
Thanks everybody for being with us today, sharing this today. We're so grateful you're here. Appreciate you always being with us. And some of you did put your emails in the chat, so I will email you the chat. Thanks everyone. Have a good afternoon. And if the weather is a little inclementing right now, I hope you stay safe. Bye everyone.
Bye.